Look, I am making all things new.
Look, I am making all things new.
Aha, yes amen panere norganel.
Look, I am making all things new. Look, I am making all things new.
Today, friends, we want to talk about and focus on how you, each and every one of you, are anything but ordinary.
We do feel privileged to have had this time. We haven't gotten to know you like we would in an in-person event, but it has been great to read your chats and connect. We want to remind you that following the plenary are workshops. And in the workshops, you can get to the links through the landing page. And don't forget to fill out the evaluation, which will appear in the chat box 10 minutes before the end of the class.
Well, a reminder that during worship today, we will be celebrating communion. Plan on having your own communion elements, something to drink, and something to eat.
As you heard yesterday and a little more today, we will be taking an offering during the afternoon's worship service. The funds from that offering will go towards the Val Murphy Scholarship and Awards. It's a wonderful way for us to invite people into the conference who might not be able to afford to come any other way.
Because we all know that continuing education events, including APCE's annual event, can be so expensive. Back in 1988, recognizing the need by many for financial assistance for participation in the annual event, the APCE leadership established its first scholarship named in honor of E. Valeria Murphy.
Val Murphy was a pioneering advocate for persons of color serving in Christian education, and she became the first recipient of what is now APCE's Sustain Life Achievement Award.
Val's love of Christian education inspired the beginnings of a scholarship program that has now expanded to 7 different scholarships. Be thinking ahead to the 2022 annual event and consider whether you should apply.
This year, given the pandemic circumstances and this online conference venue, an 8th scholarship has been added for which our denominational partners could name up to 4 recipients to receive a 2021 annual event registration. 148 names were submitted. Counting the other APCE scholarship awards, this represents an investment of over $15,000.
Friends, it is your giving that makes these scholarships possible. For those who made scholarship donations of any amount when you registered for this event, the Awards and Scholarship Ministry team offers heartiest thanks to you and to God for your generosity.
Your contribution to the Val Murphy annual event offering means that those who have served in our ministry, whether Christian educators, pastors, or volunteers, can apply for financial aid for the annual event's attendance. Truly, only God knows how many lives and souls grow in faith because of those ministries that are enriched, empowered, and sustained through the connections and content gained at APCE annual event.
2 Corinthians 9:7 tells us that God loves a cheerful giver. Now, how many times have you quoted that to others? We can assure you that your contributions to the Val Murphy annual event offering will be very cheerfully received. Here's the direct web address, but the easy way to look under the Support tab on APCE's homepage. Thanks be to God for your generous hearts.
According to the APCE records, the first Lifetime Achievement Award and first Educator of the Year Award were given in 1978. For over 4 decades, APCE has recognized and celebrated particular educators and their ministries with those honors. As you heard yesterday, with the Connect and the Empower Awards, we are able to recognize these individuals and their work in Christian formation only because you took time to nominate them.
The Sustained Achievement Award is given to an educator who is retired and whose body of work continues to inspire and sustain others. While Phyllis Voss Wiesman may be officially retired from formal employment as a Christian educator, she is tireless in her service to God's people and Christ Church, as near as her own congregation and as far away as Malawi in Africa. Let's hear more about Phyllis and her lifetime of service.
I have had the privilege of knowing Phyllis Wiesman since she started being one of our well-respected volunteer ushers in 2013.
Phyllis Wiesman and I have been friends, writing partners, and sounding boards for each other for over 35 years.
I remember the first time I met her 25 years ago in the marketplace at the very first APCE annual event that I attended.
I have known Phyllis for the past 5 years, and during this time, she has been a remarkable contributor to the Office of Undergraduate Admissions at Notre Dame.
She's the consummate educator, always sharing resources, whether on Malawi and mission or about service, liturgy, you name it. Phyllis knows where the resources are or has written them herself.
No one can count the number of great books and articles she has written. You know why? Because she will have completed another one before you finish your counting.
What to say about Phyllis? Well, 2 words among many percolate to the top, and that's sharing and humility.
Phyllis has been a great partner over these years. Hardworking, creative, persistent, always energetic.
Phyllis Wiesman's work has saved many lives, and people are still alive today because of this kind of ministry.
On campus, Phyllis has been recognized for her achievements with not 1 but 3 distinguished alumni awards.
Phyllis brings joy to everything that she does and is an amazing example of living a life of purpose and a life centered on Christ.
She taught me how to write, she taught me how to edit, and she gave me confidence and made me much braver than I thought I would ever be.
She brings her wealth of experience to share in the best possible model of mentoring with her colleagues, and she's always open to new and different things that we do there.
Thank you, Phyllis, for helping to bring us into the First Presbyterian family.
Thank you so much for the work you do.
Congratulations, Phyllis.
Hi, Phyllis. Way to go. You are awesome.
I can't think of a more fitting human being to receive this prestigious honor than Phyllis, and I hope she's not going to watch this. Well, she is going to watch this? Oh, no, she's going to see this. Well, Phyllis, congratulations.
Job well done. We are so proud of you.
Love you, Phyllis.
Love you, Phyllis. Yay, Sustain Award-winning Phyllis. Woo-hoo.
In recognition of her significant achievements in the field of Christian education that have inspired and sustained others, it's my great honor and joy to present the Association of Presbyterian Church Educators 2021 Sustain Lifetime Achievement Award to Phyllis Voss Wiesman. With Phyllis, to give her the tokens bestowed upon her by APCE, is her husband, Ken.
Congratulations.
Thank you. In addition to expressing the phrase, thank you to APCE for this honor, I want to offer a word, an acronym, to help sustain us through a lifetime of ministry in Christian education. That word is Brownies. B, background. Brownies originated in Chicago in 1893, the city that was to be the site of APCE 2021. R, recipe. Bertha Palmer, chair of the Board of Lady Managers for Chicago's Columbian Exposition, charged the pastry chef at her husband's hotel to invent a dessert that would be easy to box and transport. Our recipe as Christian educators is found in the Bible. O, options. Just as there are many types of brownies, cheesecake, peanut butter, turtle, we must be open to discovering many ways of educating in order to reach all of our learners. W, world. In 1893, the Columbian Exposition brought the world to Chicago and Chicago to the world. The Women's Building alone houses exhibits from 47 countries. As educators, be mindful to include a global perspective, a world view in all ministries. And need. Bertha Palmer saw a need, a way to nourish people, especially women, at the fair. Our mission is to nurture the physical, emotional, and spiritual lives of people in our congregations, communities, nation, and world. Inspiration. Besides the chef who developed brownies, many people were inspired to share first at the World's Fair. Cracker Jack, Juicy Fruit Gum, the Zipper, and the Ferris Wheel. As educators, be open to the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, the active presence of God in our lives, to create the first and to recreate the familiar. Explore. Chicago's World Fair brought people to explore new ideas. Since educators learn by doing, explore beyond the walls of your building and be open to new and unique experiences for ministries. Share. For more than 125 years, the Palmer House has shared its recipe for brownies. As Christian educators, we're called to share our time, talent, and treasure in God's service. I look forward to sharing brownies with each of you in Chicago in 2022.
Congratulations, Gigi Silvis.
We join the APCE family in congratulating Phyllis and saying, well done, good and faithful servant, even though we all know she's not done yet.
The Enriched Educator of the Year awardee is someone who is still serving in a call, exemplifies educational ministry through faithful service, is a visionary in the field of Christian education, and is an advocate for church educators.
In 2021, Enriched Educator of the Year is Jeannie Ford Andrews, church educator of Second Presbyterian Church of Little Rock, Arkansas. The list of Jeannie's undertakings is extensive at all levels of the church, encompassing service not only to her own congregation and the citywide interfaith efforts she's part of, but also regional and national programs and events. To mention just one of the examples, if you were part of last year's annual event in Little Rock, you most certainly saw Jeannie zipping around the convention center and the hotel as she was co-chair of the local committee. Here is a bit more about Jeannie's ministry and her service to the church.
I can't think of anyone more deserving of the Enriched Educator of the Year award than Jeannie.
At Second Presbyterian, Jeannie has been our Educator of the Year for over 20 years.
When I think of everything that Jeannie roped me into, I know that I wouldn't have missed any of it.
When I started at Second Presbyterian as a 26-year-old new mom who had just moved across states into a new and bigger ministry role, Jeannie immediately took me under her wing.
She is the best church educator I have ever worked with or known throughout the Presbyterian Church USA.
My favorite memory of Miss Jeannie was preschool story time. We used to read books and we would do crafts, and she'd always have marshmallows there for us.
Truthfully, when I think of some of my more ridiculous moments in ministry, not only has Jeannie Ford been a part of those things, but she's often talked me into doing those things.
We have cried together and laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed together. If you haven't seen Jeannie make an entrance at Vacation Bible School in a scuba suit or on a pogo stick, then you have missed out.
Many people love Jeannie. I just happened to be the lucky one that she married. Jeannie was speechless when she learned she was to receive this recognition. And in typical fashion, her response was, well, there are so many people more deserving than me. My reaction was, well, what took you guys at APCE so long to figure that out?
So congratulations, Jeannie, on this important recognition. You're a wonderful person, an outstanding church educator, and my good friend.
Congratulations, friend. You mean so much to us.
We love you, Miss Jeannie, and I'm so glad you got this award.
Jeannie, because you have cradled so many in the faith,
It is with great joy that I present to you the 2021 APCE Enrich Award as Educator of the Year.
Thank you, Karen, my dear friend, for nominating me for this honor, and thank you to the Awards and Scholarship Ministry team for choosing me to receive it. I've had almost 9 months to process this, and I still can't believe it's real. If this were November, I might call out for a recount of the ministry team votes. But we had a December 18th deadline for making this video, and so as you can see, here we are the second week of Advent recording our video. A week ago, I was standing right here recording a children's message about Mary and her visit from the angel Gabriel. I was wondering with the children what it was like to receive news so amazing that you could hardly believe it. My mind went straight to that evening last February when the committee shared this news with me. How can this be? I remember thinking. One morning in October, I was reading the newspaper and came across a short article on Louise Gluck, an American poet who had just been awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature. And there in the article was her version of my acceptance. In her words, I was completely flabbergasted that they would choose a white female poet. I was stunned to receive the award when so many other exceptional American poets and writers have been overlooked. When you think of American poets who have not gotten the Nobel, it's daunting. I was shocked. I too was shocked, and it is daunting, but I am also so very honored and humbled to be recognized by this group of friends and colleagues that is the Association of Presbyterian Church Educators. I am but one of many who have been nurtured and enriched through many years of participation in APCE events, through sitting at the feet of APCE giants. Although sitting at the feet may be an exaggeration, most often you could find me at a table near the back left corner of the ballroom with my APCE buddies soaking it all in. Through sustaining relationships that have grown through the years, and through wrestling with the challenging issues that face us all. We all know the landscape of the church and the world of Christian education is changing, and this pandemic has certainly put an exclamation point on the situation. Sadly, more and more churches are not able to sustain positions for educators, especially non-ordained educators. Some days I feel like an endangered species, but y'all, the church needs us, ordained and non-ordained. In our Reformed heritage, we hold education as a powerful gift from God, a gift that enables us to navigate the world, a gift of the power of critical thinking, a gift that enables us to connect our faith and our lives, a gift that enables us to do justice. The stories of our faith are so much more than stories. They are our language and our anchor, and need to be passed on and to be nurtured. To close, I want to share with you a pew note from a young friend at my church here in Little Rock that was shared with me by her mother. It's Sunday. I love Sunday. I like learning about God. Do you like Sunday too? Friends, this is why we do what we do. Indeed, the world of Christian education is changing and will continue to change, and that's a good thing. But I pray that what will never change in the church is a desire to grow in faith and our commitment to provide models, mentors, teachers, and partners, and a variety of opportunities yet to be imagined for people of all ages to explore our Christian story and to know the riches that are ours in God's greatness. Friends, let us keep the faith. And again, thank you.
The Association of Presbyterian Church Educators gives thanks to God for Jeannie Ford Andrews and her tireless work in Christian formation. And we are honored to celebrate her as the APCE 2021 Enrich Educator of the Year.
As we say, congratulations once more to all 4 APCE Award recipients. Here's one final reminder that these recognitions rely completely on your nomination. check the APCE website under the Event tab, read the criteria for each award, and note the deadlines for submissions. The Awards and Scholarships Ministry team thanks you in advance for giving them great work to do. Speaking about groups that are doing great work, did you know that there is a virtual conference choir?
I understand that we do, Tom. The APCE Church Educators are presenting virtually for the first time a familiar hymn with brand new lyrics by Reverend Ben Johnston Craze. We're celebrating the importance of Christian formation as we seek to discern God's guidance in these new times.
Oh my goodness, that was absolutely sensational. And Ann, I think I've noticed another thing that we might not necessarily, that we might have in common?
Yeah.
We weren't singing in the video.
We weren't singing in the video, but look at all those names of people who did. We are so grateful that educators have such a variety of gifts, and that was just wonderful.
It was absolutely remarkable. Thank you so much. Did you want your mid-morning snack?
My what?
Maybe there's another thing we don't have in common. Multiple donuts each meal, each day.
This morning, we are so pleased to have Amy at Cremus Parks from Grace Presbyterian Church in Asheville, North Carolina. When we were thinking about who we wanted to bring this final message to us, we wanted an educator. We wanted someone who truly knows what it means and truly understands what it means to connect, enrich, empower, and sustain others in faith formation. And also someone who is raising 9 chickens. So we are so excited to welcome Amy Kim.
Oh, there I am. Good morning, siblings. Before I get started, I would love to hear from you in the chat. What is inspiring you about ministry after being together the past 2 days of APCE? Go ahead and share that in the chat. It has been wonderful to gather on technology and GNTV, all the creativity, so many colleagues, the connections for everyone. Look at all of the things that have been exciting you. Friends, feel that energy. Hearing new things. Goodness, you have so many things that have been inspiring you that I cannot even read them that quickly. Yes. 1,000 APCEians. Who knew that that was a category? Thank you, Paul. Let's remember all of those things as we continue to move forward, because we are moving forward into this new time and space. We are going to close the chat momentarily, but thank you so much for all the ways that you are being inspired by ministry, by being in this space together. This expansive table that we have been a part of the past couple days. And thank you to Anne and Tom, who have been our guides faithfully through all of this. I am so thankful for Anne and Tom and the other leaders who have pivoted and created space for over 1,000 of my siblings to gather during this time that is anything but ordinary. When I talk to children about ordinary time, I like to call it extraordinary time. Yes, and you need the hands, extraordinary time. Here is the definition of extraordinary. Very unusual or remarkable, specially convened. I'm not saying that this time was specially convened by God. There is absolutely no way that the death and unrest and damage that has been done is specially convened. But I have seen so many ways that God uses anything and everything, especially the disruption of it all, to stir us toward a deeper sense of the holy and of ourselves. Extraordinary time is represented by the color green, which is the color of growth. We are in the season of growth, And all of us have been through an extraordinary year while continuing to live into this new year of unknowns and more growth opportunities. Friends, we are following in the steps of our ancestors. There is not a story of transformation in Scripture that does not first start with disruption. A call for us to change, to do something new, to leave something behind, to imagine more possibilities, while being reminded of the abundance we find in our connection to the divine. From being in the wilderness to messy family stories, joy and lament, being asked to leave our nets and fish for men, finding the Spirit in fire and unknown languages. All of us have lived into this space in so many ways. One of the most important resources in ministry has been that of the cloud of witnesses, those who have come before me and have been in this journey all over the world, that get what it is to be in spaces where connecting children to Jesus is always at the forefront. All of you. So, as I prepared for this time, I reached out for some help. And no surprise at all, you came through. Some I have known since I was very young, and others I have yet to meet in person. It's the wisdom of the gathered community of faith. All of them come with titles and accolades that are both notable and nothing compared to their belovedness. As an educator, I have experienced times when I feel like a lesser part of the church because of titles and all the things we do to make sure folks know who is who. For the purposes of this time, I wanted to introduce folks by their first names, the ones their parents, their Sunday school teachers, and loved ones address them by. An attempt to recognize how beloved each of us is and the reality that all of us are called to this ministry together, wherever you are. Here is what they had to share about this time being extraordinary.
The extraordinary ways that new avenues of ministry have opened up, things we never would have thought about doing before, like sharing stories with children over Zoom and drive-through birthday parties and graduation recognitions.
It's also been nice that I don't have to drive to evening meetings, which means I have a little bit more time in the evening to relax and unwind and be able to binge watch Korean dramas. And that's been a gift, unexpected gift, having more time to myself. It's also been strange because this time of pandemic has parts that were very overwhelming, and then parts that became very underwhelming. There were some aspects of my job that was much harder to do because of the pandemic, but then there were aspects of my job that became a lot easier because of the pandemic. And I couldn't quite figure out what it was that I was feeling. This sense of uneasiness, right? And I realized it was that constant tension that I was feeling between, oh, I have too much to do, and oh, I'm not doing enough.
So in the midst of ordinary time, it is unquestionably an extraordinary time. And it has been a time of revelation, not just in terms of the scary book of the Bible, but in terms of revealing things. And I think part of what's been striking to me about this time is how some things that I thought were pretty steady have turned out to be pretty ephemeral. And other things that we might have considered weak have turned out to be strong.
I think what's been extraordinary, I started a new call while all this was happening, so about at the beginning of 2020, and learning the system while learning how to be nimble because of what COVID required, and learning even as a system may even have pushback, the importance of just being honest in my authentic self, even as things were unfolding, is what I really learned to be grounded in.
It's been extraordinary to see certain people who maybe not have necessarily be the most connectional begin to really lean into others, whether it be in cohorts. For me in seminary, I just started my second year. I was halfway through my first year when COVID came through, and my cohort, we were all really close, and we all looked forward to just being with each other on Saturdays on campus. But we had to learn how to really connect in deeper ways in mediums that maybe feel impersonal, and I'm grateful for that.
I think what has been extraordinary for me is how quickly we went from in-person everything to online everything. It was a matter of days. And thank God for technology and people who know how to use it and helped us to make that transition almost seamlessly.
What was extraordinary was that the ordinary still was there. The worship, the daily chores, going to the store, however masked I chose to be, and everything was still there. The biggest thing that affected me was not being able to visit family. I had a niece who was extremely ill, so close to death that it was very difficult to not go. And fortunately, she has come through with so many prayers and is doing so well. But I could go whenever I wanted to before, and it was extraordinary that I was grounded from not going out.
I just think this has been a wonderful awakening for our church family, and we have seen so many great new programs embraced and people offering one another grace in the ways that we've done things.
How people have shown up for me and the community I live in, but also how I show up for myself and care for myself, and how strong I am has really been extraordinary to see.
I think for me, what's been most striking is the difficulty that it was to just pivot overnight and figure out how to do educational ministry in a completely different context. When we are so relational, and we had to figure out how to do ministry in ways that we couldn't actually be together. I found it really kind of overwhelming and extremely challenging.
For me, it has been an opportunity to spend time with family and to slow down, to begin to think a little bit more about life that is right now rather than life that is ahead, and an opportunity to really just settle and stay in the moment, to learn to live as I am and as God has given me day by day.
I have found energy and excitement in that idea of being creative in a new way, basically relearning our jobs, which has been highly stressful, don't get me wrong, but it has also tapped into creativity that I had just been not using because I've been going through the motions of this is what we do every year. We just kind of change the content, but this is the flow. And now we've had to do everything completely differently. And it's been extraordinary. It's been difficult. It's also been inspiring and allowed me to feel creative again.
Over the last year, I watched the church, the whole Presbyterian denomination, take a giant leap forward in terms of our ability to embrace and use new technologies. I always knew that virtual church and online worship were going to be the wave of the future. I just thought that it would take us 30 years to get there. Instead, it was fascinating and amazing to watch the church do, in the course of just a few weeks, what I thought would take decades.
During this time, one of the most extraordinary things I have found has been the way that my 7-year-old son has moved through just this incredibly intense time period. In the last year in particular, I'm more and more aware. I feel awkward so often when we talk about racism in a way, because I realize it's so unfamiliar, because I never grew up having these conversations. And I've been really just so taken aback by how much he takes away in this really exciting way, that he's learning, and that I can be an imperfect vessel for those conversations. And I can say, this is why things exist in a particular way. And if there are things I don't know, then we look them up together.
Receiving a new call in the middle of a pandemic, and then moving 1,600 miles. That was extraordinary. Everything being done by Zoom. Only knowing the church by what I could find on Facebook and could ask other people. The fact that God called me to this place at this time is extraordinary. So yeah, that's what's extraordinary, starting a new call.
I think that God has given us an opportunity in the middle of the situation to really remember what is important. Remember the value of relationships, of self-love, and the opportunity to really discover what God's love looks like for us as individuals and as a community.
Thank you, friends. So here is some of my story. I am a third-generation Indigenous Latinx Presbyterian from Utah, said no one ever. My grandfather was in the first graduating class of Manal School, a Presbyterian boarding school in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He was so thankful for the education afforded to him, he was determined to raise his family in the Presbyterian Church. So, Juan and Manuelita Archuleta did just that. They raised 10 children in the faith of the Presbyterian Church. Of those 10, 7 became ruling elders. And my mother continued this in our family, prioritizing our connection to the Presbyterian Church USA as I grew. I grew up in the Salt Lake Valley. Since everyone is posting the then and now pics, here is a little snapshot of my headshots through childhood. Okay, that is enough of that. I had a reality of growing up in a place where I was not like everyone else and did not share a language of faith or a culture that was similar to my peers. It was not always a hope-filled place. The waters I found myself swimming in were both very still and then jarringly rough and seemingly out of control. Growing up was a disruptive time for me, yet the community of faith was a life vest through it all. The songs about an arky, the pride of memorizing the Apostles' Creed, and the familiar scent of the wick of the acolyte lighter were touchstones for me. The educators that created space and planted seeds in me continue to be powerful forces in my life and the life of our family. As an aside, last year I was honored to be in Salt Lake City when Florence, my dear preschool Sunday school teacher, was in the hospital. I was able to surprise her at her bedside and hold her hand as she smiled and shared such words of love. That day, she was going home to be in her own space, knowing that death was coming soon. I was able to help her get into the car and give her one last hug. I looked into her beautiful blue eyes and said, "Thank you for teaching me about Jesus." She responded, "It was my pleasure." Just like my grandfather and his family, the space created through the church was the compass that has gotten me and my family through and continues to get us through the disruptions and rough waters of life. Clearly, this history shaped much of who I am today and the vocation that I have chosen. I wouldn't change a thing, but I have to say, the seasons of change and challenge have not always been welcomed with open arms. The challenges of life have required that I consistently interrogate who I am and what I want to be about. I know when I say the word interrogate, some people tend to shift in their seats, but it's the word I use. You see, when I started to untangle the emotional baggage, the mental upheaval, the hold of growing up in white supremacy culture I had and continue to have, they clearly define who I am. And I needed to figure out who I wanted to be and what I needed to sustain me and to ask for help. And I don't know when the last time was that you tried to untangle some ribbon, a necklace, or a child's hair. The thing is, if you don't start at the bottom, at the very edges, and you end up going right in the middle of it, you won't get very far. You have to start at the end and work your way toward the center. As you go, you may find that you actually create more tangles and need to address those before you go back to the original tangle. It's hard work. For me, the work of untangling all of that is lifelong, which means that while I begin, I also need to recognize what tools I need to sustain me in this journey. And wouldn't you know it, these past 2 years, God has given me a lot of space to think through and cultivate this toolbox. So I ask you, what has sustained you through this season? What have you found you need? What has this time created space for that has become a part of your toolbox? Please share this in the chat and read some of what you are seeing come up. Now, as you continue to respond and read, I want us to take some deep breaths. Breathing is at the core of my toolbox. It has allowed me to remain in my body, for me to regulate the energy at my core and remind me of my belovedness. So I invite you to take some breaths with me. After we do this, we will hear about what has sustained some of our siblings through this time. So I invite you to ground your feet on the ground, to pull your shoulders back, opening up the breadth of your lungs, and breathe with me. In, and then out. Another one in, and out, and in, and out. Let us now hear what is sustaining our siblings.
Even when the world is swirling and there's chaos around me, I can go back to the practice of centering even as the world is happening, so I can find my peace, which is the thing that means the most to me right now.
The misconception that love is weak because love is often gentle is revealed, I think, in a time like this one. We see that love is in fact incredibly strong and incredibly durable. Even under all these stressors, it has a tendency to flow around the stone like a river and find its way, like a river always finds its way to the ocean. God is good all the time.
Faith is knowing you're on a team, even if you do not know who all the players are. Life is not solo play. We've learned it's not solo play. And although we were alone, and I was alone during the pandemic, I wasn't lonely because the church is a connectional church. And we became even more connectional.
God gave me wise counsel in the form of some really good people during the call process. And God prepared my new community for me. And, that has been phenomenal. Being welcomed into a new community, even when I don't know what most of the people look like without their mask on. I've seen them from here up, yeah. So yeah, God has sustained me by giving me a community that has truly embraced me.
For every Zoom that no one shows up for or a couple people show up for, there are those texts you get from your youth, like sharing good news with you. They picked you to share that news with. And for every Sunday school lesson that you've worked so hard and planned for, and it just falls flat, there's a parent who tells you that their child included you in their nightly prayers. And for every time I feel like I have nothing left to give, I feel this community around me, whether it's on social media or through cohorts or support groups for youth leaders and Christian educators, just knowing that we have each other and that we're not alone.
Strategically placed people in strategically placed moments when I really was wondering what is happening.
I like to joke that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me as long as I know what those things are. That's hard to do in a pandemic. But God has been good and has reminded me to take deep breaths, to slow down and remember that God is God and I am not, and I am so grateful. And to remember to appreciate what's right in front of me and to not try to think too far in advance or worry about what's going to happen, but to be grateful for the gift of every day.
We often talk about Jesus Christ as the Word of God, the Logos, and so thinking about that and watching my 1-year-old daughter learn to talk and seeing those connections has been really life-giving for me.
I have spent time in my yard, out in nature. It's really helped ground me and connect with God in a new way. I spent time with my Christian education colleagues and connecting with them, as well as taking advantage of all these wonderful online learning opportunities throughout this pandemic.
The sustaining power of God has been helpful as well, and yet it has helped in so many different ways. recognizing once again that I belong to God and that, quite frankly, this life is not my own. I've had to live as others have under this pandemic, and recognizing that stillness, being still and knowing that God is God, has a significant value.
My father died recently, and I was amazed at the ways the APCE family reached out to me through cards and private messages and phone calls, and just seeking to support in ways that I really didn't realize would even be important to them. But it just reminds me of the great family that APCE really is and has become for me. So I'm really grateful for the friends and colleagues who have been with me in ministry for 25 years or more, and the ways that APCE allows me to continue making new connections.
I would take my walk every single morning with or without my dog. I found it a wonderful, freeing opportunity to pray, but the prayers were more conversation. Everything that was going on in my mind, in my heart, in my spirit, I was able to just spill out because I was alone outside, talking with God, observing His creation, as well as thinking and praying about everything going on in the world, how things are going on in our church, my family, who were all so distant from me because of COVID. And so it was a great opportunity for deep conversation with God.
Now, well, first of all, thank you, friends. I really have some wonderful friends. Now, one of the most joyful embodied tools I have cultivated more and more is that of letting my body be free, finding a way to get out of my head and connect to music and movement. So, we need to breathe, to be connected to our bodies so that we can do the next thing, which is to push. Valerie Carr, a prophetic leader in the work of justice, talks about revolutionary love. She makes a correlation to this love in the birth of her child, the kind of love that remembers that you need people, partners in this work. That when she thought she couldn't complete the task of birthing, she had someone she loved on either side of her. They all took a deep breath, and then she pushed and kept in this pattern until it was done. This is crucial to sustaining us and keeping hope in us. And this is the thing. Hope can feel naive, like some sort of dream or a wish that your heart makes, a space that does not recognize the state of the world. Hope is this internal recognition of the abundance of love and grace that is our birthright, a space where we recognize that our choices matter, that we are part of the solution and are necessary to move humanity in a better direction, that our liberation is bound up in one another. It is in this space that we can choose to untangle, to make room for and cultivate, or to keep filling and tightening in order to keep it away. A year ago, November, I was serving a church in Ohio. It was a weekday night where we had kids' choir, dinner, and then council meetings. While our kids were gathering in our fellowship hall, there was the normal volume rise that comes when kids go from chatting to chasing one another around the room. Fearful that one of our elders who was working close by might get bothered, I came into the space and asked my sweet friends, "Why is it so loud?" They looked at me and started to move toward their typical waiting space. The children's music director looked at me shouting, "Grab her, she just stabbed her." Immediately, I looked over to find that indeed, a babysitter of one of our families, a young college student, had blood coming from her arm, as a woman I did not recognize was walking away from her. Then I went into mama bear mode. I grabbed this woman, asked her who she was and why she was here, as we all directed kids to move away, and other adults tended to the young woman, called emergency services, and got the kids out of the space. Then there was the realization that she still had a knife in her hand, and it became real. In that moment, I wanted to take her out of the building, but I am brown, and she is white, and I didn't trust the outcome of what could or would happen as we went outside. At the same time, I remembered a volunteer that was in a room nearby. I started yelling for him by name. He came in looking confused. I explained that she had a knife and we needed to get it out of her hand. He came behind me and helped hold her as I was able to move her knees to get her to the ground, where we held her while he got the knife out of her hand. As soon as she was secure, I asked him if I could go and make sure our kids were okay. What followed were days and weeks of sadness mixed with anger, thanksgiving that it wasn't worse, and processing. So much to untangle. Why did this happen? Why isn't there more support for people with mental illness? How can we create a safe space in the church for these children, for all of us, ever again? Thank God for the cloud of witnesses near and far. They checked in, brought food, adult beverage, and booked a massage. They gave me space to breathe. And those children, they were right there with us, that night praying for the young woman and the perpetrator. This time started me on an even deeper journey of untangling that which was untangling before, and then tried to tighten and tangle even more after this happened. Trauma of any kind seeps its way into our thinking and what we knew to be solid, and it can obliterate its strength. For me, I was very aware of everything, of large crowds, of exits where children were. Sleep came with visions of trying to keep children safe, unable to know if it was ever going to be safe again. Simultaneously, I wanted to gather with those who were there, those who understood the upheaval in my being. Thankfully, the children's music director lived 6 houses down from me, and we found ourselves checking in all day. Crying, talking, crying some more, making plans for how to move on. Within a day or so, Presbyterian Disaster Assistance was there. 3 messengers of hope, there to walk with us and hold us up. Trauma specialists in the community and school counselors of our children surrounded us 3 days after as we made a special time for us to re-enter the building. And my family, I am so thankful. Justin, my spouse, has given me space to heal and the understanding when I couldn't explain all the feelings or understand the sadness and anger. Our children joined me at church 2 days later to help rearrange the space where it had happened, creating new space for our children to explore and be in when they came to the church the next time. My children did not complain, get annoyed, or stop helping until it was done. I knew that this was something that was going to take some time and something I was not able to do on my own. I called my doctor, talked with a nutritionist, got a therapist specializing in trauma, and started to untangle myself. God was calling me to this hope that is inside, the one that remembers who I am, whose I am, and what I can do to be a partner in the work of justice, of peace, and the restoration of myself and all of us. Hope is this internal recognition of the abundance of love and grace that is our birthright, a space where we recognize that our choices matter. Friends, we all enter this space, the work of education, with so much to untangle. We all have our stories of struggle, lament, and joy. We have seen and absorbed so much in this work of caring and cultivating in a world that is so broken. All of this, all of you, are essential to the work of planting and sustaining hope in our world. The invitation I give you now is to start making a list of those things you know you need to untangle, the places that are holding you back from making space for hope, for the love and grace that is yours, that has always been yours. Not because your life is horrible or that life is so overwhelming. It might be. But also the recognition that we are the seed planters, the ones who do so much to innovate, to imagine, to articulate the expansive love of God through stories, through crafts, wondering and playing, usually only getting glimpses of how our work has taken root and grown. We need to make sure we are taking care of ourselves. This is how we sustain hope. Not just now, but in this new thing God is doing among us. The way you have navigated this new time may also be a part of the movement toward you making space for you, for more wholeness. As you listen to this next song called My, I would like for you to find paper, for you to write down words or phrases that you hear, possibly ways God is calling you to make space for hope, to untangle anything that is holding you back.
The light from the window is fading, you turn on the night. The sound from the avenue's calling you, open your eyes. And when you find you're spending your time wanting for words but never speak, you tell yourself that the things you need come slow, but inside you just don't know. Let your bright light shine. Let your words live on far beyond this life, beyond this life, beyond this life. Hold on to anything, everything's over and done. Has the fear taken over you? Tell me, is that what you want to make up your life? Time after time speak. You tell yourself that the things you need come slow, but inside you just don't know. How your bright light shines. Let your words live on far beyond this life. Does your wild, wild heart weigh you down sometimes? Well, at the cost of living this life.
Breathe again with me. In and out. In, out. One more in and out. Hear these blessings for you, for us today.
Think on those good things. Philippians 4:8 talks about, finally, siblings in Christ, whatever is good and pleasant and beautiful. Think on those things and put your energy behind those things. Put your hand to the plow and work with siblings in Christ and others to make sure that the love and justice of Jesus Christ happens. Do what you can do. For if we each play our role, then the symphony of the music that we play as one common humanity, everybody created by God, put some corresponding actions with those and do our part. And then at the end of the day, rest, knowing that we can do all that we can and then give everything up to God, who is Alpha and Omega, the beginning, the end, the author and finisher of our faith and the keeper of our lives. And it's good to know that God is good.
Friends, take a deep breath. You are not alone. God is with you in the midst of this pandemic. God is with you in ministry. Jesus, of all people, knew what it was like to have so many people needing so many things and all at once. Yet even Jesus took time to breathe deep, to pray, to take care of himself.
I want to encourage you to reach out to others in this time. And even if we are able to get vaccinated and move around a little bit more freely and see our friends and family, I hope that you'll be able to retain some of the good practices, wisdoms that you have gained during this time and let it lift you up.
Offer yourself some grace. We are often our toughest critics, and those of you who I know personally, that is definitely the case. We are so hard on ourselves because we expect such excellence from ourselves, and we want to provide that. But it's okay to not get it 100% all the time.
While this is the first pandemic that any of us have faced, it is certainly not the first pandemic for the church. Presbyterians survived the flu of 1918. Christianity survived the bubonic plague in Europe and countless other diseases that have swept through our world over the last 2 centuries. And God has been faithful through all of it. God has been faithful to us for longer than any of us have ever been alive and longer than any of us can remember. God has been faithful for thousands of years, and God will continue to be faithful for thousands of years more.
To remember that you are not alone. We are surrounded by colleagues and friends that join us on this journey. They are there to help, to support, to pray for, to cry with. Trust them, count on them, depend on them.
I would say to keep showing up. Keep showing up even when things are hard, and keep fighting for injustice, and learn more, ask questions, be intentional about your questions, learn, listen, really listen.
Trust and believe. If we are able to trust and believe, I think we can make it through just about anything, and we have thus far. Trust that God is present with us in and through all of our lives, and I'm thankful for that gift as well.
Remember your baptism. Remember that you've been named and claimed as Christ's very own. The church that I'm now serving has this language of remembering that everyone is a precious child of God. So for you to be grounded in your truest identity, and it was never about the things that you did on your calendar throughout the week. It was never about the buildings that you found yourself in. It was never about the job that you may or may not have in the same way. It was always about whose you are and who you belong to.
We're not alone. I've learned that more than anything through this pandemic, is that people have been rallying in ways that I haven't seen before. More traffic on Facebook groups and sharing our ideas and our creativity, and even just our bummers that happen, and commiserating with one another.
To continue to care for each other, right? To really do our part, right? Jesus reminds us that we are called to love our neighbor as ourselves. And I am convinced that when I care for myself, I can show up better in every capacity of my life. And when you care for yourself, you can show up in the best way you can. And when we do that, we create a space for recognizing God's presence in each other. And I think something really special happens when we do that. And I'm grateful for that.
Ask for help, my friends. It's hard doing educational ministry right now. And I believe that most of our people want to help us. So ask.
Remember that we are because you are. We do belong to God, but we also do belong to each other.
Amen.
And to not lose sight that even when you don't agree, you still belong to each other. So love each other. And please remember I'm going to.
Well, we have stepped out of the boat. We had to. And I think we just need to remember to keep our eyes on Jesus, to care for our own spiritual growth, and we will have the strength, the stamina, and the energy for the path forward.
You don't have to be perfect. It's okay to mess up. And that this is really an invitation to our freedom. That learning about people's experiences and learning about, the way things have maybe been set up in a way that it doesn't have to be like that. There are new ways of being, and that it really is an invitation to our freedom.
I would encourage the church to take this time to be less busy, maybe to do one or two fewer things. I don't know if it's healthy for us to try to maintain business as usual and to be as productive, and it's not just in the church but society as a whole. And I feel like we're trying to stay in a sort of this rat race or this productivity sort of pipeline that's not effective or healthy for anyone.
My words of encouragement is that the church and God are infinite. Keep showing up. Keep remembering who your teammates have been, and discover and uncover who else is playing along with you on this God's team.
A word that I would use for this is
is embrace. I think God is doing a new thing in the world, certainly, and in the church. And I think it's time to embrace that new thing, break those molds that we've had to reconfigure and reimagine during this pandemic, and embrace that and figure out where God is leading us in a new way.
As we move forward in this crazy times, I just want to remind you that you're a gift. You are right where you're supposed to be, and you bring so many great things to this world. No matter where you are or what you're doing, you are a gift to your congregation or to your family, to a lot of people or just one. You are a gift. We're thankful for you and the gifts that you bring to the table. And we have no doubt that God is using you to build God's kingdom in whatever position and whatever capacity. You're a gift.
Siblings, I am so thankful for the hope that is being cultivated in all of us. The ways we are pushing forward with imagination, recognizing that we haven't even touched the surface of the abundance that God has for us. My favorite movement in godly play is when we talk about God coming near. We are reminded and directed to gently move our hand above whatever the character or space is. So please, remember that God is near, moving in and through you as you continue to do the best job in the church, nurturing the faith of the most wonderful gift of little humans and the adults that accompany them in life. Dance. And always remember, always, that you are not alone.
Amy, that was fabulous. I don't know how to say thank you enough. I'm wondering if we have some time to take a few questions.
Yeah, are they going to be about your dance moves? Because those were pretty amazing.
Well, listen, if we don't have enough questions, I might show you a few of my other tricks.
I'm just thankful you got up from the floor.
I'm thankful I didn't fall on the floor. Yeah.
So we're going to invite participants that are out there is to use the question and answer option there and submit your questions that you have for Amy, and Tom and I will be monitoring those and can relay those to Amy.
I know that some people were asking who that song was by. My. It's by Rob Thomas. And so it's like throwing back to the 90s, I think, or early 2000s. But it's a beautiful, beautiful song.
Absolutely. I absolutely love it. I don't know if you can see questions that you want to go towards, Amy, or do you want me to read a few to you?
I'll let you read them just in case. I'm not getting them. I don't know.
Perfect. What has the Spirit revealed to you that people need to understand during this time of crisis that could inspire us to be uniquely authentic?
That we do have a lot to learn, but we're also really capable right where we are. I think the amount of stretching and learning all these new things have been evidence of how wonderfully we are created to figure these things out, and that we have really had to rely on our interdependence. I have constantly been amazed at how this has reminded us that we do need each other. We need the people who bag our groceries. We need our teachers who do amazing work to keep our kids all together. We need technology. We need all of these different things. And so I don't want us to forget that when we get to this new place, that we really do need one another.
Amen. And that's what this conference is about. Knowing that we are not alone, which I just love that theme. I'm seeing several that come from the same direction. You spoke about a really intense experience, a moment of violence and tragedy that shaped you. What words would you share with those who have had traumatic experiences? And how do we invite the Spirit to transform our dark moments into something life-giving?
Thanks for the question. The first is the only way is through it. I think many of us would like to have a quick fix or to go to a therapy session or take a pill or, I don't know, fill in the blank to get through something. And the work is necessary and the work is lifelong. It doesn't go away. The trauma and the experience gets more distant, but the work still needs to be had. And if we don't do it, it's going to keep tingling. It's going to keep holding us back. And so I think the thing is that when things are tangled, it's all so tight and you're not even sharing it with the people around you. They feel it though. They feel this tense time. And so when you start untangling, it's like just your energy, the spirit has more room to move. People around you are able to get closer to you. And so if we do that work and keep untangling those things, we're freer. We're freer to embrace those things. We can help communities embrace new things, find new ways of being. All of it is a call and all of it is a way that God's going to show up. I don't think God has made these things happen, but God really does come and turn all of this mourning into literal dancing with 1,000 of our colleagues, or this sense of that I'm not alone, that I have a partner in all of this.
Wow, Amy, that is great. How important it is to focus on that. One of our questions then is, how can we comfort the folks in our church family who are so resistant to change? How can we comfort them in their fear?
So I would say part of the work of the church is to stop making people feel comfortable or have the desire to make people feel comfortable. That's actually not our job. I think our job is to ask a lot of questions to help people notice how they're feeling, what's going on in their bodies. So much of our Reformed faith siblings, we do a lot of things in proper and order and all of that stuff. And we forget that we need to pay attention to what's going on internally. Many times the uncomfortable feelings have nothing to do with what's being asked of them or the things that are changing in the church. It may be because things are changing in their life. It may be because it's triggering something that they have held dear and are afraid that they can't hold that dear anymore. I think that we need to remember that helping people be uncomfortable and sitting with them while they're uncomfortable is really important. Not to comfort them, but to help them realize I've been uncomfortable too. I don't have this muscle to flex. I need to figure it out. I mean, the more I start dancing and doing like dance exercise, the more my body's like, what is that feeling over here? Because they're muscles that I haven't used. And so I don't go, oh, well, I just shouldn't do that anymore because I have this soreness. It's no, I need to keep doing it over and over again so that it can be a part of who I am.
Amy, I'm so thrilled to hear you say it. I guess maybe it's a conviction of my own soul that I need to be reminded that it is, as an educator, it's not my job to make everybody feel comfortable. And you said it, our speakers yesterday said it, our speakers 2 days ago said it, that our task is to be faithful, and it is powerful. We invited you here because so many people had mentioned your name and said you are a premier educator across the nation. And your voice and gifts have to be heard at a conference like this. And I am seeing a lot of people who want to dive in deeper on the skill set that you bring with us. In fact, they're coming so quickly, I'm losing my place. How would you help kids step into the role of creating the church for the future during this time?
So I think constantly lifting their voices up, not us talking about them, but them talking about them. I think the children in our congregations are the most transformational conduits of the Spirit, that there's just something undeniable when our kids are pointing stuff out to us that seem so simple and obvious, but also so deep and needed. I think that they are able to cut through the BS, that it's much harder to philosophize everything away. When you hear young people really just talking and standing in their own space, it's really important. I also think that our children aren't building the church of the future. They're in the building now. They're an active part, they're an equal part of what's going on with us. And if we keep denying that they are an active part, then we're denying the work of the Spirit and all the gifts that they keep bringing to us. I mean, it's partly why we would prefer to be with the young people than the adults. They have so much to teach us and keep it so real.
Thank you for that answer, Amy. For somebody who is equally supportive of what's going on with children, I really appreciate that response a lot. We have a question that's going to take us back in the direction of the trauma experience. The question is it possible in our educational ministries to pre-strengthen people who will invariably experience trauma at some point in their lives?
I think yes and no. I think we have no idea how that trauma will take form in their life. But I do think that practice is huge. I think there is something about having things, like we say, written on our hearts, the stories that we understand of struggle, so that when they're going through struggle, they can recall these stories or songs. I mean, how many of us, when we're stressed out, will start going back to music, to places that help move us forward, that help remind us of God's love? I think sometimes we get kind of, I don't know, we get mired down by this old sense of doing things. And, I'm not super like, memorize all your scriptures. But I do think there's a place, right? There's a place for us to make sure that we are giving people the opportunity to memorize some things so that it stays with them. Nothing's better than a kid telling you the Bible story back in their own words, right? For a parishioner to say, oh my gosh, I remember when you were talking about Job, and now I'm going through this thing and I'm seeing some of the correlation. We have to not be afraid of asking them to internalize those stories, to internalize the words and prayers and things that we do in and out. I mean, they're rote to us because we keep doing them. But I loved that this year's VBS that we used talked about putting your hand on your head and your heart when you prayed, to recognize our need to do that. There's something about teaching people to embody and hold on to things so that when things get hard, when traumas arise, they can remember that center, remember that core, remember their belovedness. I don't think there is one thing, but I do think that we can help people by asking them to practice these things.
Beautiful. Thank you. Staying on some of that track, a few people are wondering, was there any reconciliation with the woman who stabbed the young woman?
Yeah. So that woman had tried to do this act previously, was very ill. And I went to the hearing of her, and what I was struck by the most, one is that it was just sad. I mean, it was sad because we had all sorts of people with the person who had been stabbed, the stabbing victim. I'm very careful to not say the victim, because the reality is one person got stabbed and a community was the victim of that stabbing. But she was there and was able to testify, and her family was there, and her friends were there, and I was there, and my amazing son came with me. And I looked over, and her parents were there, and that was it. And I imagine that her parents were living their worst nightmare, watching this unfold and not know what to do, how to do it. So I was really sad for them. And while I don't believe she herself would have been able to have a conversation with me that would have been helpful, I was able to talk to her parents and to let them know that the church had been praying for them. And they said thank you, and said, we actually know that you've been praying for us because someone we know goes to your church. And so for me, that was enough to recognize the humanity of this person, this child of God, and her parents that were all suffering in very different ways than we were. The punishment that she got, I think, was helpful because she is in treatment. She's in a high security place. She will not be around people, and hopefully will be able to do some of that untangling. But again, I don't know that there's much more than that, but I am really thankful for that moment with her parents.
Wow. Thank you, Amy, for that reflection. So when we think of our children whose lives are so scheduled and hectic right now, do you have some ideas how we might help foster Sabbath in our children?
Well, we're all going to have to figure out how to slow our roll with all the devices. I mean, it has become a place where it's necessary, right, for them to be on devices all the time. But I also think we need to be as intentional about time together. I think in the beginning, we realized that we could do things like play more games together or do puzzles. I also think the amount of walks that people were taking just were a way to breathe, right? A way to get out of the house because everybody was stuck in the house. I think scheduling those things for your family is really important for us to not just ask our kids to do that work, but that we probably need that work too. What are you encouraging families to do to be together, to spend time together, to ask questions about noticing where God is moving them, talking to them? What do you think would make sense for us to practice Sabbath? Ask them. They have amazing ideas. They would probably come up with things you would never imagine. That I think we need to, again, look at all the tools we have and figure out what does it mean to create breathing space here. Maybe it's actual physical space that we can all be together. If people haven't been eating at the table because it's also been a desk and a classroom, then we need to start figuring that out, right? Figuring out a space where we can all eat together and share and break bread. I think a lot of it is more simple, and that we need to go back again to the interdependence of us all, and what does it mean for us to take time and space together to practice Sabbath.
Amy, we just want to thank you so much for what you have given. You are a sister in Christ. You are truly an incredible educator. And we thank you for sharing your brilliance, your stories, and your understanding. I think you've given us a lot to think about. We look forward to seeing you later tonight for our evening late night chat.
Well,
Not so late night.
Thank you all very much. And to all the educators who sent videos in and helped me articulate this wonderful message, I'm so thankful and humbled.
God bless you.